Fall is here in full swing, so we have a lot of preparation to do and loose ends to tie up before winter hits. We have been feverishly working in the garden to plant and harvest, and inside we have been preserving and catching up on projects we have put off all summer. Thank you, Birch Living, for sponsoring this video. More on them in a bit. Yesterday I was unavailable and asked my boys to come out here and start to harvest the sweet potatoes. They clipped away some of the vines and they found a huge sweet potato while they were doing that.
Here's a face comparison. It's bigger than my face.
I have a feeling there's going to be more than one big sweet potato in here. We started out with some new seed stock this year. My stuff from the last 5 or 6 years I've been seed saving, and every year they have kind of diminished in quality. So I started with new seed stock and it turned out to be a very good move. I know the bigger sweet potatoes are a little less sweet, a little more starchy, but I think that's actually going to work out well for us because we really like them best of all for sweet potato fries. The plan is to go through all of these sweet potatoes, cut off all of the vines so we can kind of get underneath here and see what's going on and start pulling out sweet potatoes. We did find a little problem on the sweet potatoes. Some of them had soft spots, and I have never had that happen to me before. I'm not sure if they were in a spot with bad drainage or if it was because we had pulled off the vines and then we left them for like 2 or 3 days before we got to pulling the rest of the sweet potatoes out. After we harvested all of the potatoes, I let them cure in the shed for a couple of weeks, but then it started to get cold at night, and sweet potatoes hate the cold. They can get damaged if it drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so we brought them inside to finish curing. I just store my sweet potatoes at room temperature throughout the entire winter. Normally we store these in wooden crates instead of cardboard boxes, but we actually have used every single wooden crate to store our onions and our potatoes. So we have increased our production for all of our storage crops so far this year. It took me a few years to figure out the right amount of row feet and number of plants to be able to get a year's supply of all of our storage crops. So every year I have been planting about that same amount, but our production keeps going up. So that's a good sign that my soil is healthy and it's feeding the plants well. Usually we go through about 200 pounds of sweet potatoes in a year, and I harvested about 100 pounds more than that this year. So I do have plans to preserve the excess in case we ever have a year where we don't have a good yield. Another thing that I've been working on is planting in the high tunnel. We already planted some broccoli and I am planting some lettuce here. This is a variety called Winter Density. It is my favorite type of lettuce to grow in cold weather. We also planted some kale and some cabbages and then watered that all in with a soil prebiotic. We're planting strawberry plugs today. These you plant in the fall and you can harvest them the next spring. It's different than any other type of strawberry planting that I've tried. I learned about this from the Winter Garden Challenge that Seed Time put on. I talked about this a couple of videos ago. But basically during that, Michael Kilpatrick from the Farm on Central, he does this method of strawberry growing and has amazing results. So I thought I definitely want to try this and see how it goes. So my plan for this is I'm actually going to experiment with 2 different locations for growing these strawberries. I'm going to plant 48 of them in my tunnel and then 48 outside and kind of compare and see the differences. Obviously it's not going to be like an exact very good experiment because that soil where I'm going to plant them in the outside garden has been developed for like 4 years that we've been here, so it's really good soil. This soil here in the tunnel is brand new, but I did do a soil test, 2 soil tests actually before I laid any compost down in this area. So the soil underneath should be good to go. It's just that the other one has more organic matter. The experiment's going to be fun to see any differences in yields or pests or bugs and diseases. I'm excited for it. So we're gonna go ahead and plant these in the tunnel. We're gonna lay down some paper so that we don't have to deal with the weeds later on. Hopefully that is the worst part about growing strawberries is the weeds, so you definitely need some sort of weed barrier, whether it be an organic one or an inorganic one. So right now we're just going to use the paper.
Planting!
The strawberries were planted 15 inches apart in all directions. There's 2 rows down this 30-inch bed. And then in each of the holes, I put a little bit of blood meal and a little bit of kelp meal to feed them and get them going. The last thing we planted in here is celery. This variety is Tango. I seeded this on August 19th in soil blocks, and then I potted them up. And I wasn't sure if they were actually going to mature in time, but they are getting pretty big, so I'm thinking we are going to be able to get a harvest off of these. I could actually harvest off them right now if I wanted to, but we're going to wait a little bit longer. As of right now, we are just watering everything inside the tunnel with a sprinkler and a hose, but pretty soon we're going to be setting up irrigation in here. We are going to have both overhead irrigation and drip available. Around this time of year, I kind of feel the need to shift my focus from projects that are outside to projects that are inside, because we have been putting off projects the basically entire spring and summer, and so it's time to get some things done inside our house. Recently, I was reading this book, and it was talking about how when we collect a lot of stuff and it sits around us, like in our homes, it can trigger anxiety, whether you're realizing it's triggering it or not. So one of my goals for over the winter is to declutter our house and to help my kids especially declutter their rooms so that everywhere in our home is a more peaceful place to be. And as a part of that, we decided to do a little mini makeover to my boys' room to help them be motivated to keep it clean. Another reason behind that was over the summer, they were complaining about back pain from their mattresses. That was interesting to me because they're kids, so kids don't normally get back pain like that. And I knew it was time to update their mattresses and replace them. Choosing a mattress was easy this time around because we already found a favorite. The mattresses that we got for them are from Birch Living. If you haven't heard of them before, Birch makes mattresses crafted with organic and natural materials that have been sustainably sourced. They don't use cheap materials like fiberglass, which is often used as a flame retardant in mattresses and can be harmful to your health. Yeah, it's like no chemical smell. So last year, Cam and I upgraded our own mattress to a Birch Luxe mattress. We like our mattress a little bit more on the soft side, so we got the optional mattress topper, and it is so comfortable. I actually really have a hard time sleeping anywhere else now because I'm spoiled by this really nice mattress. For the boys, we decided to get them the original Birch Natural Mattresses.
Riggs, if you're good, you may inherit one of these one day.
I love having the peace of mind that they won't be breathing in all of these harmful chemicals or fiberglass from their mattresses. Yeah! Woohoo! Especially considering we spend a third of each day sleeping, so it's definitely a worthwhile place to make sure everything is natural and chemical free. Since I am not a big shopper and I don't like to leave my house a lot, especially now that we have a new baby, it is really nice to be able to have the mattress delivered straight to our door. Birch Living has some exciting flash sales going on this month, so it's a great time to upgrade your mattress. You get to have the peace of mind of having a 100-night sleep trial to test it out, along with a 25-year warranty.
So comfy. Nice.
If you're looking for a new bed, definitely check out Birch Living. Visit birchliving.com/seasonal homestead to get 20% off a Birch mattress plus 2 free EcoRest pillows. And for your little ones, check out the Birch Kids Natural Mattress, which is a 2023 Good Housekeeping Parenting Awards winner. We're pretty much done with decluttering, cleaning, and organizing the boys' room. We still need to do a few more things as far as like their little makeover goes. Cam set up some lights for them to read by at night. That was one of their requests. And we replaced their overhead light. It was probably the cheapest light that I bought in the entire house, and apparently it was a really cheap quality too because it was the first one to break. We are still waiting on a rug in here. Boys are really happy with it because there's a lot less clutter and there's a lot less for them to clean. Now my other kids are asking for me to help them with their rooms as well, so we'll probably be doing those over the next couple of months. So just to recap where I left off a few weeks ago, we started preserving apples by making applesauce, and I was also experimenting with making a raw applesauce by freeze drying it, along with freeze drying some apple slices. We did run into a problem when we tried to use our new extra large freeze dryer. We didn't pay close enough attention to the requirements and needed to have an electrician hook up a dedicated 20 amp circuit along with a different style of plug. And I didn't realize that until like the moment we set it up. So we got that all taken care of and moved the freeze dryer to a new spot in our main garage. And we decided to move it there not because of electrical things, but because I needed to get it out of our third garage area. Cam is converting that space into a workshop for woodworking. The sawdust in there and the freeze dryer are not a good mix. So the freeze dryer moved into our other garage, and the first batch we do on a new machine is a bread run, which for us means purchasing super cheap bread to test out the freeze dryer and to make sure it's working. And then also the bread absorbs any odors from manufacturing. So we don't usually eat the bread afterwards. We feed it to our animals. With that all done, we were able to freeze dry our apple slices. Before we were able to get that extra large freeze dryer set up, we were using our smaller one, and I made some raw freeze dried applesauce.
Delish. Tastes better than normal applesauce.
It turned out so good, so much better than I anticipated. I mentioned last time I was worried about the gritty texture that comes with blending apples, but after it was freeze dried and we rehydrated it, it was hardly noticeable. The flavor of the applesauce was kind of like apple cider, but with an applesauce texture. Another apple thing that Noelle wanted to try was making fruit leather out of the apples, and just to save time and because we were experimenting with raw things, we decided to not cook the applesauce and make it the same way that we did the freeze-dried applesauce. So we just put the apples in the blender after peeling and coring them, and then we put them onto dehydrator trays. I have done raw fruit before on dehydrator trays as like a fruit leather, and the only thing about that is when you're doing a raw fruit leather, it is never going to be as pliable as a cooked one. The other thing that makes fruit leather really pliable is if you add some pectin, but that also requires some cooking to it. So for this batch, we just did plain raw blended apples on the trays. We dehydrate this at 105 degrees Fahrenheit for about 12 hours. When it's done, it should feel dry when it's finished, but also maintain some flexibility. After letting it cool completely, then we peeled it off the mat. I usually cut the fruit leather into smaller pieces and then place them onto parchment paper, and then we roll them up from there and tie them. And it's really important to store them in an airtight container, because if you don't do that, they will rehydrate and be really hard to peel off the parchment paper. I still had a few more apples to use up, kind of the bottom of the box, and some of them were going bad, so I had to chop off the bad pieces. So I just cut them up into quarters, and I thought it would be fun to do a little bit more experimentation and do a fruit leather with the pectin and then compare it right against the raw fruit leather that I did. So I used Pomona's pectin to make this. I like Pomona's pectin because you can use a lot less sugar and the pectin still works. I prepared the apples the same way I do a normal cooked applesauce, put them through the food mill, and right here I am making the calcium water that activates Pomona's pectin. And I'm putting a little honey in there and then mixing the actual pectin with that. This idea to use pectin in fruit leather is not my idea. It comes from Carolyn at Homesteading Family. I am adapting her idea to work with apples Basically, the idea is you just make a jam with Pomona's pectin. I use the guide in the Pomona's pectin packet, just their instructions. And then we placed it on the trays, and we ended up doing like 2.5 to 3 cups per tray. And I was wishing after doing this that we had those kind of trays with a little lip on the edges, because if you just have the flat mats, then you always get an edge that's really thin and you can't get the fruit leather quite thick enough. So after testing them side by side, the results were that the pectin one was definitely more chewy and flexible, but the flavor was not quite as strong and potent as the raw one. I really loved the flavor of the raw one, but the texture was definitely a little more tough and hard to bite into. So I'll probably keep making the raw version just because it was faster and easier and I like the flavor a little bit better. The apple slices finished drying, so now it's time to put them in containers and store them for winter. The tray still cold?
Yeah, it's kind of nice cold. They weigh less because there's less moisture. It's like you made this counter just for these exact width.